have unlocked the eternal link to internal source, the key of imagination, your admission, access to the enlightened dimension. A gateway at the junction of darkness and light, the place at which the chaos of our conditioned frame of mind give way to a life in constant flux, only to be mastered through vigilant discipline. Peaceful times may come, testing times may go. This is the ebb and flow.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ebb and Flow podcast. I'm your host, Eben Britton. It's great to be with you all on this fine day we have before us. Very excited for today's guest, Carolina Reis Oliveira, the CEO of OneSkin. It's so good to have you here with me, Carol.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Eben. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to dive into your story and your company and your mission on this planet of what you're trying to get done and what you're trying to do for the world. So I think I always like to start with, how did you get to this place and what is it that you do?
Yes, that's a long story. So I'll try
to for the pod.
I'll try to bring an overview and then we can dive deeper in some of pieces of it. So I have a Ph.D. in stem cell biology and tissue engineering, and I was always interested in the power of science to solve the most fundamental problems of humanity, mainly related to the health of humans. So when I started to study science, I always saw an opportunity to, find a cure for a specific disease and bring this to people in order to improve our quality of life. And when I was finishing my PhD, I got together with two colleagues and we decided to bring that research that we were developing in the lab for more than 10 years to something that could help or optimize the industry or people's lives. And the area of stem cell research, it's full of amazing opportunities. We can cure disease, and we can grow organs in the lab. And one of the first applications that we saw for this technology was to grow human skins to replace animal testing. So we saw this as a very important need, not only for the industry, but the population was really pushing for a more ethical system to develop new products, being that cosmetics or drugs. And stem cells allow us to grow any kind of tissue in the lab, and skin is one of the easiest one because it's kind of simple layers that we can replicate in the lab. So that's how we started. Eventually, we came here to the US. We joined IndieBio, that's this biotech accelerator, and we needed to reinvent ourselves. We saw other companies offering a similar solution, and we decided to focus on the anti-aging market because this is a massive market. The population is getting older and older, and we need solutions that will help us to not only live longer, but live healthier, right? And unfortunately, most of the products in the market, they are not really backed by science, or they are not delivering based on the claims that they are making. So our first goal was how we can validate if those products that are meant to rejuvenate the skin, if they are really working from a scientific point of view. And in this process of testing and developing a system to validate the efficacy of those products, we realized that most of them, they were not addressing the root cause of skin aging. And if we do a parallel of what we have in our healthcare system today, most of the treatments that we have, we treat diseases, right? We treat the symptoms. We don't treat the cause of what's leading to that disease. So we saw an opportunity to apply all the latest advancements in the science of longevity, of aging biology, to develop a product that really targets the underlying mechanisms that leads to skin aging, and that also leads to other tissues aging. So today, OneSkin is focusing on developing solutions that will address aging from its root causes. The first product is a product to promote skin health or skin rejuvenation. But since what we are targeting is a common mechanism to different tissues aging, this can be extended to other tissues. And eventually, our long-term goal is really to have a treatment that will keep our bodies healthier longer. So again, maintaining our health, so we don't need to repair what's broken down the road. So it's more a preventative approach that we believe that can, be more effective in the long term. And that's what we are working today with OneSkin.
It's so fascinating. I mean, I'm really fascinated by stem cells and peptides. Sorry, Carol, will you hold on 1 second?
Yes.
I'm just going to pause this for 1 second. All right, so stem cells and peptides. I'm really interested how you made that. What was the thing that sort of evolved in you that took you from stem cells to peptides?
Yes. So when we decided to address aging biology, understand what are the most important mechanisms that leads to aging, we really dove deeper in the science, and there is a field around cellular senescence that's evolving a lot in the past 5 years. So basically,
cellular senescence.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yes, sure. So basically, our cells, they replicate for around 50 times. And when they reach this limit, usually they die or they enter in this state of cellular senescence. So we also call them like zombie cells, because these cells, they should die, but somehow they can stay alive, but they are not functioning well anymore, but they start secreting inflammation in your body. So when we are young, our immune system recognizes those cells and clear those cells up. As our immune system ages, we lose this ability to clear those cells out, and then they start to build up in our tissues, and this inflammation that they are secreting leads to tissue dysfunction that leads to several age-related disease. So these cells, they accumulate in our joints, they accumulate in our heart, in our brain, and leads to, for example, osteoarthritis, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and so on. So it seems that the same cause is leading to several different age-related diseases. And what we saw is that by eliminating those cells, or there are drugs that can specifically, clear those cells out, or preventing the accumulation of those cells can prevent or treat what we call these age-related diseases. And we saw a lot of companies starting with this approach of treating specific disease, and we thought about applying the same rationale to treat skin aging by preventing or eliminating senescent cells. So what we needed to do, in order to find what is a new compound or a new molecule that can do this job. And we start screening, testing different types of peptides, because a peptide is a small piece of a protein and has biological function. It can act in different ways in our bodies. And we then went out to find a peptide that could prevent or target senescent cells. And by doing this, we would prevent skin aging, or we would ameliorate the signs of skin aging. So we start testing more than 1,000 of peptides until we got to this one we called OS1. And we show that this peptide can not only reduce the amount of senescent cells in our skins, but it can in fact make your skin to look better. So basically, by treating what we believe that's the cause of skin aging in the molecular level, the end result is that you have a better looking skin, because it brings your skin to a younger and more functional state. And the way that we use the stem cells or skin-derived cells, we can replicate those cells in the lab, and we can grow skins that range from a very young skin, like neonatal skin, until a very aged skin. So by doing that, we can simulate the skin aging process in the lab, and then we can treat the aged skin with this peptide and see how much we are reversing the aging process from tissue structure point of view, but also from the molecular level. Basically, we can measure the age of the tissue, and then we can measure how much we are decreasing that biological age, and then we can confirm the effect of any compound that we are testing.
It's so interesting. So how, I'm curious in the process of this, because you said earlier that when we're young, our immune system, it goes through it scans our system and it clears out these dysfunctional cells.
Correct. Yeah.
Which makes complete sense. And as we get older, our immune system, which I'm kind of curious I don't know if this is your expertise or not, but the immune system, when you say the immune system, what is that system in our bodies? Like, what are the mechanisms, or what are the functioning components of that are going through our bodies and getting rid of these sick and dead cells? Because I've heard this, I've read this many times, and in my own seeking and understanding of how our bodies work and the health of our physical bodies, our cells, our physical body, literally the cells of it die and regenerate every 7 years. So every 7 years, we have a completely new physical body. Is that correct?
Not for all of organs. Yes, some organs, yes. For example, the skin regenerates much faster in 1 month. Basically, you grow a new skin. But other organs like your heart or your brain, this process is much slower.
Okay, that's good info. So then what are the components of the immune system that are going in throughout our bodies and clearing out the dysfunctional cells and letting the new ones come into being or regenerate the old cells?
Yes, so our immune system is composed to different types of immune cells, leukocytes. There is one called natural killer that recognize those cells that needs to be eliminated and basically connect to this cell and induce the cell death of the cell that's connecting to. Okay. So there are these types of cells, lymphocytes, and natural killers that can help doing this kind of surveillance process. But with aging, those cells also start to get less effective, and then they can't do the job very well. So that's why we need both to boost our immune system, but also to boost our own tissues to work properly, so we don't accumulate that many of senescence cells. And the way that we can do that is basically increasing the ability of repair damage, because age comes from, an accumulation of damage. And if our bodies and our cells are more equipped to repair this damage, we won't have, a lot of senescent cells in our tissues.
So when you're testing these peptides on the senescent cells, so because senescent cells are basically, like you said, they could be identified as these zombie cells. They're dysfunctional. They shouldn't even really be there. But
Correct,
somehow they've found a way to linger in your system and haven't been cleared out, because as our immune systems age and these sites these immunocells become less efficient, they fail to track down these dysfunctional cells, these zombie cells, these senescent cells. So when the peptide gets introduced, is it healing the senescent cell, repairing it, or is it getting rid of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we are still doing a lot of experiments to answer very clearly. Our first hypothesis is that we can repair the damage so the cell doesn't go to this senescent state.
Yes,
so for example,
that just occurred as I was talking.
Yeah, so for example, one of the experiments that we do, we expose the skin cells to UVB radiation, because UVB is one of the main drivers of photoaging, skin aging. And when we expose the cells to UVB and right after we treat them with the peptide, we see that we have much less senescent cells than the ones that were not treated. So even if they were damaged, with the treatment, they're able to repair that damage. And then in the end, they are still healthy and functional compared to the one that's not treated. So our peptide works like boosting our own ability to repair the damage, so we don't get just senescence. The other way that it helps is decreasing the level of inflammation, because once senescent cells secretes inflammation that kind of contaminates the cells around. It's like a bad apple effect. So if we don't form senescent cells and we don't have that inflammation being released, we don't have this chain effect of creating more senescent cells. So that's another way. But there are other companies working on a similar approach, not for skin, that they can really induce the death of those senescent cells. And when they did these experiments in animals, was very, very impressive. So for example, when they treated like old monkeys, they saw that they were not only much more active, but they started like growing black hair again. They start like looking younger systemically when you eliminate those cells systemically from your body. So I think that's the future where this field is going. And at OneSkin, we start with a topical application because it's safer, so we can bring faster to the consumers. But in the future, we are probably going to have treatments that will eliminate or, clear those cells out from our whole body. That's the goal.
I love it. So the idea is you strengthen the healthy cells, or the ones that have not already gotten to senescence yet, so that they don't reach that state. So you bolster the cells that are still there. Now, does that, when a cell is introduced to this peptide, does that allow it to have a healthy life cycle? so that it can then die the way it's supposed to and be removed, and then a new cell can come in?
Yes, the data that we have seen is that the skins that are treated with this peptide, they form again a better structure. So that means that they can go to the right cycle. So when the skin cycle is impaired, the skin starts to get thinner because you can't replicate well. So you don't form, the whole structure that you have in a younger skin. While the skins that are still healthy, they replicate, they form the keratin layer, and then they die. And this process continues, like to renovate the skin. So at least in skins, we have seen that that's how it's working. We needed to explore this for other organs and other tissues. What we have seen when we treated immune cells, because we did a separate experiments, we induce these immune cells to release anti-inflammatory cytokines. So when you have also less inflammation, you help like protecting your tissue from creating more senescence cells. So it's very connected how skin cells interact with your immune system, but it's very interesting to see that we can act in different ways in the skin and in the immune system, but also promoting in the end the health and improving the function of that tissue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting, what we talked about, especially on our phone call last week, because I think some people might go, how does a skincare company or a company that's creating a skincare product feel it's actually a longevity company? But I thought you had such a great answer to that. So I think, and based on that interconnectivity of all things. So
and I mean,
that.
Yeah, and there is much more that we have been learning as we go on this path. So skin has been largely overlooked in relation to its influence to our longevity, because people don't realize that skin is our largest organ, right? And since it's our largest organ, and the accumulation of senescent cells or the deterioration of our skin can produce these inflammatory molecules that can go to our body and can affect our body's levels of inflammation. So one of the main causes of chronic disease, we call it inflammaging. It's because your levels of inflammation in your body starts to increase. And before, scientists have thought that this inflammation was coming from the immune system or from the liver, but right now we have this hypothesis that this inflammation may be coming from your skin. So because of the size of this organ, in small increase of the inflammation can really, influence your body's inflammation, and this can, improve your chances to have cardiovascular diseases and Alzheimer's and even cancer. So now we have a different way to look at your skin. And if we see this connection of skin with your overall health, we need to be taking care of our skin as we age, not only, because we care about looking better, but for sure we care about not developing chronic diseases, right? So to me, this is very interesting, and it is something that we want to explore more. So another example of that is that there was this study at UCSF where they applied this cream topically on patients for 30 days. And after these 30 days, they measured the levels of inflammation in their blood. And they could see that, and the patients, they were around 50 years old. And they could see that the patients treated, they decreased the levels of inflammation closer to the levels of a person of 30 years old. So by treating your skin, you are reducing your body's level of inflammation. You are rejuvenating your body internally. And this is so exciting, you know.
Yeah, that's really profound. There's this, I don't know if you're I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a certain philosophy called Hermetic alchemy, and there's 7 principles of it. And one of the principles is as above, so below, and so below as above. And that applies to everything in the universe, including us, including human beings. So it's really interesting to apply that here when you think about the health of your skin and the health of your internal body, and why wouldn't they be interconnected? And then, like you said, if you're experiencing inflammation in the skin and it gets to such an out of control extent, it's sending these messages to all the other cells, because all our cells communicate, right? Everyone,
Right.
our cells are just like in constant communication. And that's why our thoughts are so important, and how we eat and how we live and how we take care of ourselves, because we're just like in this constant communication with ourselves and the environment and that comes down to the molecular level of our cells. So
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, so I really love this approach and what you guys are stumbling into, or maybe not stumbling into it, but what's being revealed in your work.
Yeah, for sure. Before we had an idea, of course, the skin reflects, our health internally. So if you don't sleep well, or for example, if you drink a lot, and the next day you're gonna look terrible, right? You're gonna have dark circles. So it's clear, like you can totally
Yes.
see that. But I think we are going like even further and understand that that's not even temporarily, like our skin is really reflecting our health internally. So there are studies showing the correlation of like skin appearance and your risk of cardiovascular diseases. So I think we are gonna evolve much more in understanding, this connection. But as you said, it is all connected. And if you want to, live our best healthy life, we need to treat not only internally but externally too, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's a big thing for men, I think, in particular. My wife is
Yeah.
fantastic with her skincare. She has a daily practice, a daily routine, and I'm like, I'm not, I do a lot of things, but skincare is not one of them. One of the reasons being, I will say this, and maybe you have some insight on this, but I've always had very oily skin. So my skin is just like naturally, it's super healthy, and whenever throughout my life, even when I was a teenager, I didn't really have a whole lot of issues with skin, thankfully. I had a pimple here and there, but I
Yeah.
was very lucky. But if I put anything on my face, I would get a pimple or I would get a breakout. So I've always been very skeptical of putting anything on my skin, but my wife has really introduced me to this idea, because I think for men in particular, we don't really take care of our skin. It's sort of an afterthought.
Yes, and a lot of time is because you don't trust all the products that are out there, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
men, they are usually more critical, like this is all BS. I'm not going to spend money on that.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And I also have oily skin, and I also had some, issues with products that could, make induce a breakout. But right now we are very aware of which ingredients can cause that. And even, for example, our first formulation and our brand is very much gender neutral, because we are focused on health, on skin health. It's not that much beauty or making your skin to glow. It's like having a stronger skin. It's having a resilient skin that will protect your body. So our product is very was designed to match the needs of men and women, so we can kind of include those first timers, men that are still a little skeptical, but they care about their health. Sorry, and they take supplements for, you know, to be healthier and, you know, stronger. Why not a supplement for your skin? Why not to treat your skin as well? So I think our company brings this, you know, more neutral perspective to be able to include everyone, because sorry, in the end it's all about health, right?
Yes. Yeah. And you know, I think it really, I mean, you've really illuminated this thing for me, because I think that's so, it makes complete sense. You know, the health of your skin is a reflection of the health of your internal body. You know, it makes so much sense. So I'm a big fan of peptides, as we talked about in our phone call. I told you, I was asking you if you knew about combo, which is the shamanic ceremonial medicine. It's called the warrior cleanse, and they burn it into your shoulder or different parts of your body, and you have this purging experience. And that is the venom of the green monkey frog. And in that venom is this peptide, and that's sort of the active ingredient of what goes through your system. And what I think, the way the medicine really works is it really clears out all the damaged cells and toxins, and it clears you completely out, emotionally and physically. So I'm interested in this peptides in particular, and how they're utilized and what they are, and as far as like what they are in nature. Because a peptide, like you said, it's an amino acid, right? It's a protein.
Yeah,
Okay.
peptides are the building blocks of our protein. And so they can form these bigger structures that, for example, will build our, you know, big proteins like collagen, and this, you know, basically sustains our bodies. And but they also can act as signaling molecules. So once they are, you know, individualized, they can bind to the cell, and they can activate a whole range of, you know, reactions in the cell, so inducing that cell to behave in a different way. So for example, our peptide, it goes to the cell and improves the cell capability to repair damage. So the mechanism of action should be different from, you know, the peptides included in this venom, but in the end we are inducing this damage repair, or, you know, this cleansing. So the end result could be the same. There are peptides that works, you know, in a variety of ways, but they have this ability of they are like signaling molecules. They signal for a cell to do some specific, you know, function. So and you can, there are peptides derived from plants, from animals, and, you know, even from humans. And the research on them is so extensive, because there are so, it's like limitless, the number of peptides available. So trying to find the applications to all of them is something that, you know, we can keep researching basically forever. But this is the beauty of using our biodiversity to trying to find what we have in nature, what we have that, you know, from animals or plants that can help us, you know, to treat some conditions, or, you know, to improve our health. So it's a very, very exciting field. And in some case, for example, this one that is found on a venom, in a small amount the peptide is effective, in a higher amount it can be toxic. So there is a very fine line there too.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And in the case of combo too, it's also very important how it's administered, because if you, for instance, just took the venom orally, you'd be super sick. You'd probably be paralyzed. It would work as a neurotoxin and do a lot of damage to you. But because they burn it in there, there's a very particular reason for that, because the burning actually eliminates some of the other more deleterious or damaging compounds that are in there, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting because depending on the receptor or the cell type that the peptides binds, it can have one or another effect. So probably through your oral system, you will bind to different peptides than, intramuscular.
That's really interesting. Now, I'm also interested in, what is the difference? Are stem cells peptides, or are stem cells something else entirely?
Yeah, no, stem cells are cells that can multiply and originate other cell types. So from a stem cells, we can create a skin cell, a brain cell, a heart cell. So these basically form, the stem cells forms all of our organs and tissues, and on all of our organs, we have a pool of stem cells. So for example, in the skin, as our skin renovates, we use our pool of stem cells, and then we replace the skins that are being, that are dying, that are being renovated. Some organs, it's a little harder to activate those stem cells, so they don't proliferate as much as the skin. And the peptides are the cells is made up of proteins. So the peptide compose the proteins that forms the cells. So we need both to have this renovation or this tissue functioning properly.
So on the map or the ladder of molecular structure, a peptide is a component or a building block of a cell.
Yes.
Now, we also talked about something else that was really interesting about DNA and how peptides can be used to go in and turn on and off DNA or specific markers.
Yes. So what we were talking, it's about our biological age and how this compares with our chronological age, right? So as we age, one thing that we can change is our chronological age, but our tissues, our cells accumulates modifications in our DNA. And these changes, which genes are activated or inactivated. So we call this epigenetic changes. And this is mainly influenced by our, life habits, nutrition, exercise, and so on. So our cells, our DNA accumulates those changes, and basically our cells ages. But what we can do, what it's possible to do, is to remove those changes or those modifications from our DNA and reverse our biological age. So it's almost like also clearing up those those modifications that happens in our DNA that impairs basically our cells to read the DNA properly. So instead of secrete a protein that's very functional, they secrete a protein that's not so functional, and this in the end the cell starts to deteriorate. But there are ways that we can kind of induce this reversal or this cleansing process on your DNA, and your cells start to functioning properly again. And that's what we measure with our products. If our peptide in the end is inducing this decrease in our biological age, because this can show that our cells and tissues are performing more like a younger cell. And it's very cool this way to measure, because Now, for example, when we are developing what we call longevity therapies, we don't need to follow people for 10, 30 years to see if that therapy will work, because we can measure pieces of our tissues and we can measure by the DNA if we are already promoting this age reversal process in our biological age. So, for example, if I get a piece of your skin, I can sequence the DNA of your skin. I can see the amount of the modifications that you have accumulated, and I can give your skin biological age. And then I can compare with your chronological age and tell you, okay, Eben, you are doing great. You know, your skin is really younger or not. Or maybe you need to do, take more care of your skin. And so this is a way that we can allow people. I know that's not ideal yet because you still need a piece of your skin, but at least we can allow people to understand how their biological age is related to their chronological age. And ideally we'll be, reducing our biological age as much as possible so our tissues will keep performing well.
I really want to try some OneSkin.
Yes, for sure.
The product's available now, right?
Well, the products right now is out of stock, but
okay, good for you. Good for you. That's great.
Yeah, we got a great traction after we launched, but we are already working on replacing the order, so you can add your email there and we will be notifying everyone when the product is available.
Awesome. I love that. And I'll have all that available. I'll have a link for everybody in the show notes when the podcast airs, so they can go directly to the website and order some or get on the list to get some.
Yeah, and besides the product, we have a lot of content that we are producing around longevity, around how you can make better choices today to really have a healthier and better life tomorrow. And everything that we put out there is completely backed by science. We are very stringent with all the content that we bring, because we want to make sure that we are delivering meaningful information. And as we were talking, it's not only about your skin, it's about your overall health. And there is information about fasting, nutrition, exercising, and how this affects our biological age, what we can do to be biologically younger. So that's the goal.
That's so awesome. I love that you guys, you're really advocating for the holistic push, rather than, it's not about necessarily one product that's going to change your life. But on that note, are there things that we can do to increase our own peptide production? Does our body have the ability to produce its own peptides?
Yes, we are constantly, as we renovate our cells, we need to have the building blocks. So what we eat will allow us to have, more source of, amino acids to build those proteins. And then it's not only having a lot of protein, but that protein needs to be accessible to the cells that are going to that needs to be replicating or building more protein. So a lot of protein our cells build and they secrete. So for example, in the skin, they secrete collagen and they secrete elastin that are important to keep your skin. So that's why it's a combination of having a healthy diet, that you need to have a good source of protein. So a lot of people, for example, they ask me if drinking collagen, if this will help, having more collagen in your skin. And the explanation that I bring is that drinking collagen will allow you to have more peptides available, more protein available, so your skin can potentially grow or produce more collagen. It's not like a
Okay.
direct
Uh-huh.
correlation. The collagen needs to be degraded, absorbed, and then eventually get to your skin to be, produced again.
Mm,
And there are products topically that also help your skin cells to produce more collagen. So in the end, it's a combination, but for
okay.
sure, yeah, it's related to your diet.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, obviously in the health and fitness world, protein shakes and also collagen and coffee, bulletproof coffee, it's loading it with collagen and healthy fats. That's really I think that's interesting and an important piece of the puzzle where you're taking this stuff in because there's essential and non-essential amino acids, right? So there
Right.
are some that our bodies can produce on their own, but then there are
Mhm.
others that we have to get through our diet.
Yes.
And so the ones that you consume, it's not like when you drink a protein shake, the amino acids and the protein just go straight to your muscles and build the muscle tissue. It's like your body takes it in and now has the resources to do what it needs to do the work that it
Yes.
needs
Yeah. Basically, you are giving the fuel to your body to be able to,
to do.
to uh, work. And yeah, you have the material that the body needs
Right.
to build those building blocks again.
Yeah. So if you think of your body as a structure, as like a building, your cells are the construction workers. And then when you eat, you're providing your construction workers with the proper materials to build the
Yeah.
structure or to fix it or to, keep it standing, basically.
Yeah, the peptides would be like the bricks, right? That you
Uh-huh.
needed
Yeah. Yeah.
to.
Exactly. Um well, this has been so good, Carol. I'm not sure. Is there anything? What does the future of OneSkin look like? What do you guys really? What's your vision for your company?
Yes, I love working with aging because there is so much that we can still do in this field, and there is so much exciting things happening in the science. So OneSkin, we have delivered this first product for skin rejuvenation, but our long-term goal is really to explore the treatment or the application for other diseases, or not disease. We want to prevent diseases, so we want to apply this peptide systemically that can in a way that can extend our health, and we can be living younger and more functional for longer.
Mm.
So we are going to start validating this peptide in other models of studies that we can see applications for skin. I don't know if I have mentioned this when I talked to you, but we did this preliminary study where we fed worms. These worms are called C. elegans.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so that's a very cool
Tell them.
experiment.
Tell them. Tell us
Yeah,
about it.
so C. elegans is a very well-known model to study aging because
Mm.
the worm lives around like 20 days. So if we feed the worm and it lives like 25 days or 30 days, we see that that compound that we are feeding is extending the lifespan of the worm. So when we fed these worms with OS1 or peptide, we not only saw that they lived longer, but they were much more active throughout their lives.
Yeah.
So the control group in the first days, they were active, but then they start like getting like sedentary. They couldn't move anymore. while the treated group, they were, until like the end of their lives, they were still super active, and they have, this vigor. That's
Hmm.
what we call about, health span. We want to extend the time that we live in good health. So this was a very interesting data that our peptide can really work in improving the function of our tissues, and not only extending the time that we are living. And that's what we want to explore further in our next studies. But I usually say, and my co-founders too, that we want to get to our 80s, is still, doing everything that we do today,
Yeah.
dancing on top of a table, and,
Yeah.
traveling around the world. Yeah, we don't want to have the perception that we have today about aging that brings limitations to our lives, right? We
Yes.
want to be able to do whatever we do today, and science and technology will allow us to get there. So it's very interesting what's coming ahead in terms, and we'll be benefiting of all of these technologies. So
Yeah.
yeah, great things to come.
I love that. It's turning the current medical model on its head. We live in this world where, because of the pharmaceutical medical paradigm, people think, you just live and you eat crap and you don't exercise and you drink alcohol, and at the end of it, you're tired and you're ready to die and you take pills, and that's about it. But when you really live your life and you take responsibility and accountability and you love life and you enjoy
Yeah.
it and you eat right and you exercise and you love your friends and family and you have great relationships and you have an adventurous outlook, your health and you can, and then you apply these techniques,
Mm-hmm.
like you utilize these wonderful revelations of science that, for instance, your company has provided, and you learn how to live in a preventative mode rather than let's put a band-aid on it when the disaster hits. Like, let's really live our lives in a way where we're living with abundant health and abundant energy, and let's create a surplus of that in ourselves. I love that, because that's really what I'm all about. And I see a lot of light in the world that people are really beginning to live that way, and companies like yours really bolster that way of thinking and that way of being.
Yes, and I think before the society, or we were taught that there was only one way, right? Aging hit us, and we are gonna, get all of the disease, and that's
Yeah.
it. We can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And today we are learning, no, we are the owners of these bodies, and we can do a lot today, and this can totally change, your future ahead. So
I love it.
science is here to, to reinforce, to support that. But again, as you said, it requires this ownership, right? This
Hmm.
you taking action today. But
Yes.
I think that this realization and this consciousness, it's, will help people to make better decisions. I think before we were not aware. So that's the
Yeah.
first problem. When we start to understanding that we can do things about it, then at least, yeah, that's a good beginning.
Yeah. No doubt. The acknowledgement and the understanding of where we're at, that's the first step.
Yes.
Well, I love that, Carol. Thank you so much. That was such a great uh, point to end on. And I really appreciate you and your work and how you think and your outlook on the world. It's so necessary right now. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks a lot, Evan. This was great. Talk more soon. I'll send you a product.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Is there a way before I stop the recording here? Do you want to let people know where they can find more information about OneSkin, about you? And I'll have all of this in the description as well.
Yes, on our site, oneskin.co, you have the founders and you have the links for our, social media,
Okay.
LinkedIn, and yeah, you can definitely contact us there. We are, 24/7 there to answer your questions and provide good value to everyone.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you again. I hope you guys got a lot out of that conversation, because I sure did. It was a lot of fun, a lot of great information from Carol. So thank you so much. Hey, the greatest way you can support me in this show is by rating it, reviewing it, subscribe on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on, as well as we're also available on YouTube now. So very excited about that. That's about it, y'all. Until next time, I'm Eben Britton, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.